Hi, I'm Michelle Kennedy, and this is Real Quick, a shortcast featuring an essay every day. Because I have been launching this podcast and talking a lot about the art of the essay, personal and otherwise, I have been doing a lot of reading about the topic. As I've talked and written before, I write because I am compelled to write, and those who know me know I am also compelled to talk, and do so, often. Hence this podcast, I suppose. In her essay, Why I Write, Joan Didion's voice comes through, because I can feel her version of myself in her words and in describing the same feelings I get through writing in a way I could never express. I know exactly why the personal essay works so well. When Didion writes, "Grammar is a piano I play by ear," since I seem to have been out of school the year the rules were mentioned, I am there with her at the piano. At the same time, when I read Virginia Woolf's essay, The Decay of the Essay, which I will read in tomorrow's episode, I understand exactly what she means by there being too much. It feels too loud sometimes, and she felt that way in 1905. Too many publications. The internet would overwhelm her, as it does me sometimes. But I wonder, is it because we are worried there isn't anything left to say, or because we wanted our own voices to shine through? It feels almost pretentious to think that our own singular voice should stand out among quiet ones, but that it also must be quiet. Gerald Early, the editor of The Common Reader, the journal's name comes from Woolf's collection of essays, said, in The Decay of the Essay, published in 1905, Woolf discusses the personal essay, a contrivance that has arisen in a world besotted with education, drowning in printed matter, and privileged with the tools of writing so readily and cheaply available. We indulge our egos by displaying our personal peculiarities, our opinions, for the entertainment or enlightenment of others. It is a nifty and clever personal essay about the limitations and ironical charms of the personal essay. I wonder what Woolf would have thought of Facebook and our age of the electronic word, where no opinion or peculiarity goes unexpressed, no matter how crudely. Anyway, here is Joan Didion's beautiful essay talk on writing, entitled Why I Write. Tomorrow, I will read Virginia Woolf's The Decay of the Essay, both a fantastic read or listen, and both showing just how completely navel-gazing essay writing can be, no matter from which end you come at it. Somehow, though, the essay, personal or not, is a perfectly encapsulated view of its place and time in both of these essays, Joan's from the 1970s and Virginia's from 1905. Why I Write by Joan Didion. Of course, I stole the title for this talk from George Orwell. One reason I stole it was that I like the sound of the words, why I write. There you have three short, unambiguous words that share a sound. And the sound they share is this, I. In many ways, writing is the act of saying I, of imposing oneself upon other people, of saying, listen to me, see it my way, change your mind. It's an aggressive, even a hostile act. You can disguise its qualifiers and tentative subjunctives with ellipses and evasions, with the whole manner of intimating rather than claiming, of alluding rather than stating. But there's no getting around the fact that setting words on paper is the tactic of a secret bully. An invasion, an imposition of the writer's sensibility on the reader's most private space. I stole the title not only because the words sounded right, but because they seem to sum up, in a no-nonsense way, all I have to tell you. Like many writers, I have only this one subject, this one area, the act of writing. I can bring you no reports from any other front. I may have other interests. I am interested, for example, in marine biology, but I don't flatter myself that you would come out to hear me talk about it. I am not a scholar. I am not in the least an intellectual, which is not to say that when I hear the word intellectual, I reach for my gun, but only to say that I do not think in abstracts. During the years when I was an undergraduate at Berkeley, I tried, with a kind of hopeless late adolescent energy, to buy some temporary visa into the world of ideas, to forge for myself a mind that could deal with the abstract. In short, I tried to think. I failed. My attention veered inexorably back to the specific, to the tangible, to what was generally considered by everyone I knew then, and for that matter have known since, the peripheral. I would try to contemplate the Hegelian dialect and would find myself concentrating instead on a flowering pear tree outside my window and the particular way the petals fell on my floor. I would try to read linguistic theory and would find myself wondering instead if the lights were on in the Bevatron up the hill. When I say that I was wondering if the lights were on in the Bevatron, you might immediately suspect, if you deal in ideas at all, that I was registering the Bevatron as a political symbol, thinking in shorthand about the military-industrial complex and its role in the university community. But you would be wrong. I was only wondering if the lights were on in the Bevatron and how they looked, a physical fact. I had trouble graduating from Berkeley, not because of this inability to deal with ideas. I was majoring in English, and I could locate the house and garden imagery in the portrait of a lady, as well as the next person. Imagery being by definition the kind of specific that got my attention, but simply because I had neglected to take a course in Milton. I did this. For reasons which now sound baroque, I needed a degree by the end of that summer, and the English department finally agreed. If I would come down from Sacramento every Friday and talk about the cosmology of Paradise Lost to certify me proficient in Milton. I did this. Some Fridays I took the Greyhound bus. Other Fridays I caught the Southern Pacific's city of San Francisco on the last leg of its transcontinental trip. I can no longer tell you whether Milton put the sun or the earth at the center of his universe in Paradise Lost, the central question of at least one century in a topic about which I wrote 10,000 words that summer. But I can still recall the exact rancidity of the butter in the city of San Francisco's dining car, and the way the tinted windows on the Greyhound bus cast the oil refineries around Carquinez Straits into a grayed, obscurely sinister light. In short, my attention was always on the periphery, on what I could see and taste and touch, on the butter and the Greyhound bus. During those years, I was traveling on what I knew to be a very shaky passport, forged papers. I knew that I was no legitimate resident in any world of ideas. I knew I couldn't think. All I knew then was what I couldn't do. All I knew then was what I wasn't. And it took me some years to discover what I was, which was a writer. By which I mean not a good writer or a bad writer, but simply a writer, a person whose most absorbed and passionate hours are spent arranging words on pieces of paper. Had my credentials been in order, I would never have become a writer. Had I been blessed with even limited access to my own mind, there would have been no reason to write. I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see, and what it means. What I want and what I fear. Why did the oil refineries around Carquinez Straits seem sinister to me in the summer of 1956? Why have the nightlights in the Bevatron burned in my mind for 20 years? What is going on in these pictures in my mind? When I talk about pictures in my mind, I am talking, quite specifically, about images that shimmer around the edges. There used to be an illustration in every elementary psychology book showing a cat drawn by a patient in varying stages of schizophrenia. This cat had a shimmer around it. You could see the molecular structure breaking down at the very edges of the cat. The cat became the background, and the background the cat. Everything interacting, exchanging ions. People on hallucinogens describe the same perception of objects. I'm not a schizophrenic, nor do I take hallucinogens, but certain images do shimmer for me. Look hard enough, and you can't miss the shimmer. It's there. You can't think too much about these pictures that shimmer. You just lie low and let them develop. You stay quiet. You don't talk to many people, and you keep your nervous system from shorting out, and you try to locate the cat in the shimmer, the grammar in the picture. Just as I meant shimmer, literally, I mean grammar, literally. Grammar is a piano I play by ear, since I seem to have been out of school the year the rules were mentioned. All I know about grammar is its infinite power to shift the structure of a sentence alters the meaning of that sentence as definitely and inflexibly as the position of a camera alters the meaning of the object photographed. Many people know about camera angles now, but not so many know about sentences. The arrangement of the words matters, and the arrangement you want can be found in the picture in your mind. The picture dictates the arrangement. The picture dictates whether this will be a sentence with or without clauses, a sentence that ends hard or a dying fall sentence, long or short, active or passive. The picture tells you how to arrange the words, and the arrangement of the words tells you, or tells me, what's going on in the picture. Nota bene, it tells you. You don't tell it. Note well. The picture that did, the picture that shimmered and made these other images coalesce, was the Panama airport at 6 a.m. I was in this airport only once, on a plane to Bogota that stopped for an hour to refuel, but the way it looked that morning remained superimposed on everything I saw until the day I finished a Book of Common Prayer. I lived in that airport for several years. I can still feel the hot air when I step off the plane, can see the heat already rising off the tarmac at 6 a.m. I can feel my skirt damp and wrinkled on my legs. I can feel the asphalt stick to my sandals. I remembered the big tail of a Pan American plane floating motionless down at the end of the tarmac. I remember the sound of a slot machine in the waiting room. I could tell you that I remember a particular woman in the airport, an American woman, a North Americana, I think North Americana about 40 who wore a big square emerald in lieu of a wedding ring. But there was no such woman there. I put this woman in the airport later. I made this woman up, just as I later made up a country to put the airport in and a family to run the country. This woman in the airport is neither catching a plane nor meeting one. She is ordering tea in the airport coffee shop. In fact, she is not simply ordering tea, but insisting that the water be boiled in front of her for 20 minutes. Why is this woman in this airport? Why is she going nowhere? Where has she been? Where did she get that big emerald? What derangement or disassociation makes her believe that her will to see the water boiled can possibly prevail? She has been going to one airport or another for 4 months. One could see it looking at the visas on her passport. All those airports where Charlotte Douglas's passport had been stamped would have looked alike. Sometimes the sign on the tower would say Bienvenidos, and sometimes the sign on the tower would say Bienvenue. Some places were wet and hot, and others dry and hot. But at each of these airports, the pastel concrete walls would rust and stain, and the swamp off the runway would be littered with the fuselages of cannibalized Fairchild F-227s, and the water would need boiling. I knew why Charlotte went to the airport, even if Victor did not. I knew about airports. These lines appear about halfway through a Book of Common Prayer, but I wrote them during the second week I worked on the book, long before I had any idea where Charlotte Douglas had been or why she went to airports. Until I wrote these lines, I had no character called Victor in mind. The necessity for mentioning a name and the name Victor occurred to me as I wrote the sentence. I knew why Charlotte went to the airport sounded incomplete. I knew why Charlotte went to the airport, even if Victor did not, carried a little more narrative drive. Most important of all, until I wrote these lines, I did not know who I was. Who was telling the story? I had intended until then that the I be no more than the voice of the author, a 19th century omniscient narrator. But there it was. I knew why Charlotte went to the airport, even if Victor did not. I knew about airports. This I was the voice of no author in my house. This I was someone who not only knew why Charlotte went to the airport, but also knew someone called Victor. Who was Victor? Who was this narrator? Why was this narrator telling me this story? Let me tell you one thing about why writers write. Had I known the answer to any of these questions, I would never have needed to write a novel. This essay by Joan Didion was first published in the New York Times Book Review in December of 1976. I hoped you enjoyed hearing her amazing words. I certainly enjoyed reading them. And please, as always, if you have something you would like to contribute, please write to me, writermisha1313@gmail.com, or visit my website, mishkennedy.com. And I will be reading Virginia Woolf's essay, A Decay of the Essay, tomorrow. I hope you'll join us. Thank you.